Hi, everybody. My name is Melanie Escher with the Arizona Telemedicine Program and the Southwest Telehealth Resource Center. We respectfully acknowledge the University of Arizona is on the land and territories of Indigenous peoples, and today, Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Arizona being home to the O'odham and the Yaqui. The Southwest Telehealth Resource Center represents Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, and the Four Corners region, with a combined total of 72 recognized tribes. Committed to diversity and inclusion, the university strives to build sustainable relationships with sovereign Native nations and Indigenous communities through education offerings, partnerships, and community service. So again, welcome everybody. And as we get started here, when you connected, we can go ahead and keep moving forward here. So again, we're with the Arizona Telemedicine Program, Southwest Telehealth Resource Center. We've got a webinar series, and I'm sure plenty of you have been following us. And Carol, welcome again. So of course, as you joined, when you joined the webinar, your phone or your computer mic were muted. Please use the chat function for our Q&A. There's also going to be a post webinar evaluation. I will put that link in the chat as well. And this is being recorded and will be posted later on our website. You can see the web address there, and I can put that into the chat as well.
As will the slides be included on the website as well.
Slides will be included too. Yes, thank you.
Folks are always very interested to know if that's going to happen.
So, of course, the opinions are expressed in this presentation on the following slides are solely of the presenter, not necessarily those of the organization sponsoring the webinar. Organizations do not guarantee the accuracy or reliability of the information provided herein. A lot of you got my my earlier email, which also had all this information about the continuing medical education, and there is a tracking code that will be in the evaluation. And if you haven't set up your profile yet, please contact me, and I will send out all of that information in a reminder email to everybody that is here today. This is the continuing education for credit. Okay. We already went through our disclaimer.
So many disclaimers.
I know. So welcome again. So today's session with Carol is "'Tis the Season" for the 2024 the Medicare Medicaid Services physician fee schedule. So telehealth billing and reimbursement updates. So Carol, of course, is a specialist in federal and state regulatory billing and reimbursement guidelines. She holds certificates in hospital and professional fee ophthalmologic and clinical compliance. She provides us with the rest of the story. You know her as our inside scooper on telehealth and other virtual care policies, updates, and the next new thing. So without any further ado, Carol, I'm going to pass the mic over to you.
Thank you for that very warm welcome, as usual, and hello to everyone who have joined us today and online. In addition to the multiple disclaimers about my opinions, again, my dogs have their own opinions about delivery personnel. And as you can see, the baby is growing quite well. So this is them recently. And of course, they're here with their Christmas stocking on a fluffy blanket, just waiting. They were waiting for the MPFS, no doubt, to come out in its final form, and it has. So the learning objectives for today are as follows. We're going to describe the conversion factor and budget neutrality after the end of this, or even in the next several slides. You're going to name 2 positive and 2 negative impacts of the new rulings for 2024. There may be more, but the objective is that you can just name 2. And then explain the goals for the new year concerning the changes made in the MPFS. And we're going to use that as a little bit of an open mic or an open session, because ultimately the goal is patient care, reimbursing providers as fairly as possible, given the budget restraints, and maintaining telehealth for at least the next year in its current guise. So first, we're going to talk about the conversion factor and budget neutrality. Not very telehealthy, but definitely has an impact on place of service and how much you get paid per relative value unit based upon budget neutrality requirements. I think that made sense. I was just explaining, the dogs had me up quite early this morning. Okay, so for 2024, this is interesting. So interesting. The physician fee schedule is reduced in terms of reimbursement overall by 1.25% in calendar year 2024 compared to CY 2023. The final conversion factor is released in early November is $32.74. Now, the conversion factor is what is multiplied by the relative value units derived from work RVUs performed by a provider, practice expense, malpractice costs, whether or not you're in a facility or a non-facility, and then you multiply that all together and you get expected reimbursement from Medicare. These numbers, as I have represented them on this screen, are inclusive of the 20% copay expected from a Medicare beneficiary. So the conversion factor is $32.74. It's $1.15 less. So the overall PFS was reduced by 1.25. The conversion factor was reduced by 3.4%. So we're down to $32.74 from 33. Now, when I started these webinars with Arizona TRC, we were at $36. So the hits just keep coming. So here in this example, a new patient evaluation and management service of moderate, or if it's time-based, 45 minutes, 50 minutes. There's a new time element attributed to a 99204 as opposed to a time range. But anyway, the 99204, moderate medical risk, medical decision-making, is for a non-facility 4.94 RVUs times the conversion factor. So it was $167 last year. This year, it's $164. So it's 502 now. So it went up, but the dollar figure went down. And so consider how many 99204s that your practice does in a given month, year, quarter, 10 years, as it continues to vary. This can accrue pretty quickly in terms of a loss, but there are things that are hopefully going to offset that decrease. Okay, so we're going to consider for a moment, if you will, the American Medical Association's Common Procedural Terminology Code Set. This year, there were 349 editorial changes, of which I expect all of you to know exactly what they are by the end of, no, I'm just kidding. Crazy to try to pay attention to. There are those that do. 230 of these were additions. 230 new services added to the AMA's CPT code set. This doesn't even include the HCPCS codes that CMS has added in their own bag of tricks. So I can't even tell you how many HCPCS codes. I know that 2 were added to the telehealth list. Anyway, they only deleted 49 CPT codes. So, and then they made 70 revisions. And in that revision, harken back to what I said about, instead of a time range for evaluation and management, it's going to be a time amount. I don't have that in this slide deck, so I should stop talking about it, but you can certainly find those new guidelines on the AMA's website. So the increases, the 1.25, all this stuff, there are increases that relate to new services. Everything's better. We're adding more services. And they're saying the increases are going to be in payment for primary care and other kinds of direct patient care. Now, I think we spoke of this generally in the past year about how maybe surgical specialties weren't quite so thrilled with primary care getting a boost up in terms of what they could submit to increase their payment. So this code in particular, G2211, I have had specialties ask, well, I provide longitudinal care and have an ongoing medical care relationship related to this patient's serious condition. I think I should be able to bill for it. Okay, if you're that patient's primary source of medical care, sure. But really, it's going to be what a primary care provider, and that OOEM, that's outpatient, let's see, OOEM, visit complexity. That really makes a lot of sense. I had it in my head earlier today, but it is outpatient evaluation and management visit complexity. So what this means is you get 16 additional dollars by affixing this to the E&M code that you submit. If you're discussing or arranging on that same day of service, the E&M code. So this is an add-on code, and they do not want a modifier 25 on the E&M code. They're gonna deny payment if you submit a pesky additional 25. So I guess that's how to defer payment. I'm being jaded this morning. This is just make sure that when you're submitting an E&M code with this complexity code, if you're a primary care provider or a primary care practice, and your patient has a single serious condition, and let's say you're not doing primary or principal care management or complex care management, you don't have that's set up for your practice. This is a way to start capturing that additional activity only based on the billing provider's activities in a practice. It is a permanent addition to the Medicare telehealth list, and they are also allowing audio only because there are other complexity E&M visits that have to do with complexity E&M. What am I saying? There are behavioral health visits that are also considered in that same kind of context. So the audio only would be allowed with a behavioral health code. And you know what? I've got something to say about that a little bit later, just in case a psychiatrist is performing a behavioral health service to a patient in their home, audio only. I'll try to remember that when we go to place the service codes and reimbursement. Anyway, it's only 0.49 RVUs, get 16 bucks. I heard a presentation last week from Coding Intel that said they anticipate initially about 25% of these of E&M codes by primary care providers to have this G2211, and maybe in the next year about 50%. So this is no small thing to CMS when you're considering budget neutrality, which we haven't talked about yet. Okay, and then here's another new service that is also based upon a base code of an evaluation and management code. So we have the G0136. It's an administration of a health risk assessment tool, like the PRAPARE.com. If you go prepare.com, there is a social determinant of health risk tool. And the expectation is that the person performing the evaluation and management visit will also be doing the administration of this tool in real time. This is not something, since it's not a test. It's not like a depression standardized test prior to. It is an assessment tool. So that's going to be done during an evaluation and management encounter. And of course, separately documented within the note in its own special place to document the time spent, 8 minutes, 10 minutes. And then it does also pay an additional $18.66. And it is a permanent addition to Medicare telehealth list. There's no audio only associated with that. Now, sure, it could be imagined that you're going to do this along with the annual wellness visit, and ergo there would be no copay associated with either service, since this is an add-on. But if you do it, in a subsequent evaluation and management service, it will actually require a copay. I'm just checking my time here because I just keep rattling on here. So let's go to the next slide. Oh, okay. So there was a lot of, I don't know, excitement or, not pridefulness or whatever. But as you know, health coaches were allowed to apply for a national provider identifier number several years ago and become billable providers to Medicare, Medicaid. However, there really isn't anything they can bill for yet. And case in point, they can perform and submit these well-being coaching service codes added also to the telehealth list for this year. They're T codes, they're category 3. There's no reimbursement associated with it. However, if you're a health coach, you're performing these services, report them. And I'm pretty sure they are designated to be only done by a wellness coach who's certified. So it's not like anyone else can submit that code. So we'll see what's going to happen with that one. All right, let's talk about budget neutrality. And, a certain other thing caught my ear during the Coding Intel presentation. I'm just giving a shout out to Betsy because this was the main thing I paid attention to, of course, was this in the telehealth section of her presentation in anticipation of mine. So what I found interesting is I had never heard that $20 million price before. So CMS is prohibited from changing its overall budget by more than 20 million a year. So if the budget is impacted over that $20 million threshold, then that's when they employ a budget neutrality factor to bring payments down under equal to 20 million. So I always thought, how can we not increase a budget every year? How can we just, okay, it's 20 million. I don't know where that number came from. It seems like a lot, but so what they did, they used to mess with the RVUs a lot more than they used to, than they do now, in order to bring that. So I'm saying everything would get decreased, relative value unit wise, to bring it to that $20 million threshold. However, in 2009, they changed that budget neutrality application or modus of attaining budget neutrality by decreasing the conversion factor. So it's not like the relative value units are still there. You saw from the 99204 that the RVUs went up, but the payments still went down. I think we're all being moved towards value-based care, but I'm not the only one that thinks that. Okay. So that's the conversion factor and budget neutrality, and start thinking about how this is going to affect what was actually put onto the telehealth code list, the Medicare telehealth code list, as opposed to, say, UHC's code list or your Medicaid providers code list. Of course, Access in Arizona and Medi-Cal are very generous about what is on their list. As long as you can do it via audio video, it's fine with these two Medicaid programs. I know this the telemedicine, the Southwest telemedicine program covers a lot more territory than just, Arizona. And then I speak about California a lot because that's where I'm sitting. But we can also look into that later if need be. Anyway, so sear into your brains, $20 million. That's why the conversion factor goes down every year, even though once in a while Congress intervenes, which hasn't happened yet, an additional dollar gets tossed up or 50 cents or whatever, because of course physicians are saying, I'm getting more RVUs, you're realizing it's more effort, but why am I getting paid less? So often Congress will intervene and up that conversion factor dollar amount. Okay, so that's what happened in like the last 2-3 years, but I haven't seen that kind of activity, and it is now December 12th. So usually we would hear about that before now. Okay, so let's go into positive and negative impacts of the updated MPFS. Telehealth wise, we're pretty happy, but not everybody's can be happy all the time. Unlike me. Okay. The good news is we get to hang on to, at the cliff edge, everyone talks about the cliff of telehealth for an additional year. And hopefully that cliff will keep receding into the distance as a decision to take those benefits entirely away from the Medicare beneficiaries has been kicked down the fiscal year again, or the calendar year again. So we all thought everything was going to end in December 31st, 2023. Chaos, mass hysteria. And then Medicare physician fee schedule for 2024, it outlined that everything we've been doing, pretty much everything, yeah, is going to continue for an additional year. Originating sites anywhere in the US, because it's Medicare, got to be in the US, right? And includes a person's home or what a person might consider a home, like an assisted living residence or / facility, which is not really a facility. We still get to provide OT, PT, SLP, and audiology. Thank goodness someone finally included audiologists in that list. I copied and pasted that line out from an MLN Matters newsletter that came out about the 2024 MPFS, and the URL is included on the last slide of this deck. Finally, audiologists were mentioned. They've been forgotten. What about the audiologists? They've been included. So, and that means if they're at a non-facility or at a facility or an institutional based location. So I'll get more into that later. RHCs, FQHCs, do that voodoo you've been doing all during the PHE. Might change after the end of 2024, but not now. There's also a delay in requiring behavioral health patients and having that in-person visit within 6 months prior to a first telehealth visit. And again, at subsequent intervals as the secretary determines appropriate. I may not have been paying attention. There's been so much going on. You know, I broke my shoulder. We had a puppy. That's the first time I have ever read that before. At subsequent intervals as the secretary determines appropriate. Because before it said annually, but now it's saying subsequent intervals. We're going into a vague, more beneficial direction, perhaps, for behavioral health beneficiaries. And this includes our friends at the RHCs and FQHCs. So again, I'm just continuing, yay, telehealth, positive through the end of 2024. No frequency limitations. We were afraid we'd get one every 3 days for inpatient visits. Nursing facilities, what was that, once a week? Critical care consultations. I didn't even know there was a frequency limitation on critical care consultations. I guess it must have been tied to every 3 days. I mean, critical care is critical care, and it had that baseline of 60 minutes for the first code, and then was an additional 30 minutes for that second code of actual talking consultation during a critical encounter. I have to go back and refresh my memory because now that I'm reading my slides to you, it seems confusing and aberrant. Okay, so what's great for a lot of institutions or academic medical centers, teaching physicians can continue to proctor or use audio or audio video when a resident or a fellow is conducting a telehealth visit. Now, this is important for education. We can't just stop training residents and fellows on how to use the proper way to conduct a visual examination of a patient during an audio video encounter. Especially, now this is my thinking, and I brought this up at a meeting in the last couple of weeks, was what about the next public health emergency? Why do we have to start and stop everything based on a disease process or the public health emergency? Just in and of itself, telehealth services are kind of floating back to, I don't know, I'm imagining silt. We're not silt, we're fantastic, but you know, in a pond, things are kind of going down to 20%, 15% of clinical activity. So why not keep it relevant for those patients that need it? And then when we do have a PHE occur, probably again, maybe we're not going into full lockdown. Maybe we're not going to experience the next pandemic similarly. Why not leave it in the curriculum, in the billing language, in the public focus all the time? Talk to your legislators. Okay. So what's great too for OTs, PTs, SLPs, and audiologists, so long left out of every sentence I'd read prior to this, the last 2 weeks. We don't need to do hospital without walls anymore. Some of us have brought up the conditions of participation where if a patient is a registered outpatient, they need to be seen at that outpatient clinic. Thanks to the grace of CMS, because it is their condition of participation. They get to override that. And facility providers. Now, these are providers that go out on the UB04. And why are we talking about it for the MPFS? Okay, the UB04 is the facility invoice because these providers are paid at rates derived from the RVU values arrived at on the Medicare physician fee schedule. Their reimbursement translates directly to what they get paid on the UB04 or reimbursement for a facility provider-based service. So that's why everyone was so confused about it 2 years ago, or even always, about where these providers are getting paid, where their money derives, and how they are being billed. Of course, an OT, PT, SLP audiologist at a non-facility clinic are billed out on the CMS 1500, which is the professional fee invoice to Medicare, Medicaid. But in a facility, they are allied staff and they are employed by the medical centers or the academic medical centers, and their billing goes out on a facility bill. Clear as mud. I like, there is legislation to continue those providers being able to perform telehealth services. Not sure if that includes facility or not, but rest assured, if you Google congressional activity bills for PTs, OTs, SLPs, you'll get the latest iteration of the bill under consideration. Okay, so we have new permanent. Not only are they new distance site providers, never before on the list, or even whatever, a gleam in CMS's eye, but they're permanent too, because guess what? We don't have enough behavioral health providers to satisfy all of us that became damaged and sad during the public health emergency. And it's not a field that is attracting quite as many students as in the past. So there are a lot of programs about, attracting this kind of student, but also it's nice that CMS is recognizing the providers we already have. Mental health counselors, these are certified folks. They do have bachelor's degrees and I believe masters in their field. And they are certified and licensed to provide mental health and marriage and family therapists, MFTs. Now, the diabetes self-management teaching service providers are also permanently added to our list of merry band of telehealth providers. So we have the RDs, NPs, let's call them nutrition professionals, nutritionists, not to be confused with a nurse practitioner, physician, NPP, physician assistant, CNSs. So anybody who works in diabetes self-management training remains a permanent telehealth distance site provider. Great news. Oh, and for MHCs and MFTs, get your NPI and get registered in PICO so you can start billing in 3 weeks. Get to it. Okay. Permanent services, more permanent services were added. Okay, so think back, GO136, G2211, permanent, Medicare telehealth. They've added also permanent injection training. So during the PHE, they realized, hey, this worked okay via audio and video. Let's continue doing it. And of course, there's certain hours of training that have to be in person. If you look at the regulations, think it's eight. It's 8 or 10. 8 or 10. 6 of those have to be in person. Don't listen to me. It's very clear in the DSMT guidelines about how many hours have to be in person. But the good news is, if you miss that part or want to get right into taking care of your glucose levels, you can have that injection training. If you're not somebody who has a continuous glucose monitor, if you're not, someone who has a pump affixed. So great news. And the details of this are published in chapter 12 in the online manual. All right. Here's our list of Medicare telehealth CPT codes. We love this list. We were sad. I was sad in May when there was a column that disappeared that said, it's good for 151 days. It's good for the end. It's good through the end of the year in which the PHE expires. It's good for da da da. It just disappeared. And all of a sudden I thought, great. Where am I going to find the codes that are permanent or provisional, as noted on this slide? And lo and behold, our friend at CMS, Chris Corwin. Okay, this is called a former compliance professional sleuthing about where things originate. So if you go to Excel properties, go to summary, you can see who updated that list, that column E. So thank you, Chris Corwin, for updating this list for us. And so if you want to start thinking about, what am I going to do for 2025? What's leaving? What's staying? Also, Chris and his predecessors on this list kindly put in a filter. Go ahead and click on that little caret that points down, and you can unclick permanent and you'll see what's just covered for this year, or click what's covered, unclick provisional, and you'll see what's permanent. So you can start thinking about, okay, so I've got Medicare patients in HRSA designated areas that are not in a metropolitan statistical area, because budget season's coming up in March. You know how the year goes. And if they don't continue stuff the way it is now, home is originating site, anywhere in the continent, anywhere in the United States, including I want to say, oh God, Puerto Rico. That is our part of the United States. So this is included in all of this. So start thinking about what's going to go on for budget season for 2025, if indeed that does not, if that extension can does not get kicked into 2026. So start thinking about how you want to group your patients and look at that. I know I said this last year, but I don't know if any of us really believed it was going to end. It couldn't end. Okay, so here we are thanking Chris one more time. Okay, so here's some interesting facts. I was at a meeting last week and I put this together the night before, and I thought, well, this is interesting, really, when you could think about all the codes in the world, and especially in that AMA CPT book. It has 11,100 codes. I think it's actually 11,136, give or take. So our current list, the list that you just saw, has 268 CPT codes on it. Only 112 of those are permanent, which is only 1% of the CPT book. The rest, 156, we're anticipating those, barring the can being kicked, to be removed as of January 1st, 2025. So I thought it was interesting. 2% of everything in that overall code book provided the care that our beneficiaries and patients needed during the lockdown time period of the PHE. I think we should all be giving each other a big pat on the back for not only performing telehealth prior to the PHE, but being ready to jump into the fray and provide the 2% of that code pick to patients when they were locked in their homes to prevent the spread of this disease. So again, why not keep them permanent? I'm not a negative person, but I did find the National Geographic issue because my husband subscribes and we've got 30 years of National Geographic's hard copy in our living room quarters. And I did find the issue that where it was anticipated that Dr. Fauci wrote that he anticipated the next 10 years there would be a pandemic, and voila. Okay, it's going to happen again. All right, we are at 11:42. Okay. Places of service for telehealth. Now, I was on a phone call with a dear friend or two yesterday. We're going to continue the conversation today about these places of service code for not only telehealth, but since we love telehealth, mostly about telehealth. So I'm going to start in the middle of here, in the middle. So let's ignore 02 and 10 for now and go right to down to 11. So 11 is a non-facility office. It's called office. The short description is office on the place of service code list, of which the URL I've also put on the resource page. That just means it's not part of a hospital system, or it's not part of the hospital outpatient department, which is on campus, meaning you're in the hospital, you walk downstairs and you get an x-ray. That's 22. If you're in the hospital, you walk downstairs and across the street, that's off campus. It's 250 feet away from the main joint. That's place of service 19. Kid you not. So how they're going to pay us this year, this coming year, I think this is what it is. Listen to the open door forum, put in a few questions to the very kind providers of that ODF gift, I believe, and Gift T and Patrick S. I forget his last name. Anyway, this is what they presented. During 2024, and usually, okay, so let's take place of service 11 here. You're a non-facility office. Your patient comes into the office. You're sitting in the office. You get paid a non-facility rate, which is marginally higher than the facility rate. And I'll show you what that difference is in the next slide. But let me just walk you through this, because when you are an off-campus outpatient hospital department, you are paid a physician fee or a provider fee based on a facility rate, which is lower than the non-facility rate. Because usually, if at place of service 19, your patient comes to the clinic, which is off campus, they're at 19, patient location is at the clinic, provider's at the clinic, the professional fee is a facility fee in the MPFS. The actual OPPS fee schedule, outpatient prospective payment system, says for evaluation and management and similar encounters done on it at one of those locations, 19 or 22, you get to bill a G0463. National average is $145. During the PHE, we could bill the G0463 with a CN modifier which meant we got about $40 or maybe even $25, 40% of that $145. Okay, so now let's talk about telehealth. It's all going to make sense, or you'll just cry. Okay, so O2, telehealth provided in a patient's home other than an appropriate originating site. So, a clinic, someone else's outpatient clinic, office. Say the distant site provider is at a facility. That's your regular old fashioned, good old telehealth visit. That's an O2. You get paid the facility rate, regardless if you're an office provider or a facility provider, because that originating site got to bill the Q3014, which pays around $28 this year. So everybody gets paid a facility rate, but just, okay. Telehealth provided in a patient's home. When that first came out, we all thought, should we use this now? Is it for behavioral health only? This year, it is. If the patient's at home and your provider is sitting in a non-facility clinic, you get a non-facility rate, which means you get that marginally higher reimbursement than you would normally get if you billed from place of service O2. Place of service 11, just forget about it. That's the basis of all payment, though, that middle line there. Okay, you can see me pointing. Place of service 19, we were told, in the MPFS and on the ODF about the MPFS, to continue billing like we did during the public health emergency, which is bill as if the patient was coming into your clinic, patients at home, providers at the facility clinic, whatever, 19 or 22. We get reimbursed at the non-facility rate, but we have to bill it at whatever the CPT code is, plus a 925 modifier. And that goes for facility-based providers too. So if it's going out in the UB04, you need a 95, even though there's no place of service place to put on the UB04. Okay, I digress. 22, same thing. Now, if the patient's at home and the provider's at home, I'm thinking, because we are not yet having to register a provider's home as an additional clinic location this year until they deem what they want to do with that. I think you bill as if the patient had come into the clinic, because that's where you usually bill from. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up pretty quick so we can have some questions. All right, what does this mean? Here's your 99204, which we love from our slide way back when. Non-facility reimbursement is $164.35 in 2024. The facility reimbursement is $129.98. Now, don't get confused. These are still professional fees we're talking about here. So non-facility professional fee reimbursement is $164. The professional facility, the professional that is associated with a medical center or a hospital, academic medical center, they're going to get usually $34.37 less, or standard regular old place of service to telehealth. That's what everybody got paid before the PHE. If you were in the correct HRSA designated originating site, Okay. Usual facility fee. Now I've included the OPPS for 2023. This is the October update. They don't have the January update available. They update the OPPS reimbursement fees once a quarter. Here's your $120 payment rate plus the copayment. I'm thinking it's 120 plus $24.18. Because that's got to come from the patient. I don't think that's a portion of that payment rate. So that's where I'm getting the 145.04 from. If it's wrong, just ignore it for now. So the negative impact for a facility, clinic, an ambulatory department, not associated with the medical group doing the professional fee work, the negative impact is $110.67. Because this year we're getting reimbursed at the non-facility reimbursement rate. So we can kick $34.37 over to ambulatory from the pro fee group to the med center folks. I mean, it's paying just about as much as it did submitting G0463 with the PN modifier. It's not great. So these are the updates I have for you. I mean, there's some positive, there's some negative. So the MPFS 2024 goals. I love your feedback and what you intuited those goals may have been from this 50-minute informational onslaught. Or, you know, my feeling is, of course, budget neutrality, maintain telehealth services to Medicare beneficiaries who have grown used to the convenience, who require the convenience due to physical or other requirements, transportation issues, physical restraints, da-da-da. And also, again, continuing to provide data to CMS, who must issue a report per the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2023 to Congress or the Budget Office about whether or not telehealth is additive or substitutive. Now, in your mind, you know, if your practice is still 50% telehealth and 50% in person, that's substitutive. But if your level of visits have gone up and you're busier than ever because people have more access to care, that might be considered additive. I don't know. It's a conundrum. I'm glad everyone's taking this breather for an additional year for all of our providers and our patients and us. But that whole place of service thing is kind of making us people who work with the billing teams, like, is this really what's supposed to go on the invoicing? I know Noridian is having a telehealth billing webinar, I think in the next 2 weeks. So go out to Noridian, JE and JF, and look for that upcoming educational opportunity. And I'm hoping Tammy or one of the other educators is going to speak to this specifically. And if not, then it just means that we're all learning on this together. And document your policy and why you're doing it, so that if we have to charge correct, we know when, where, and how. So with that, I'm going to conclude the formal presentation. And okay, the email for the AMA credit, that is asked and answered by Melanie. Leslie found it. Yeah. Okay, here's a question. The provider has to be in the US or just the patient? Everyone needs to be in the United States. We cannot spend Medicare dollars outside the US on foreign soil. Now, I know there is special circumstances if the patient is injured or otherwise seeking emergent care, but usually you get that paid up front and then you seek reimbursement later, or you pay up front and get reimbursement later. But that would be something to talk to your Medicare regional office about. But by and large, don't do it. Mental health counselors, what licensure does it include? License, you know, it's an MHC designation. I don't think it includes LPCs, but there will be more information coming out on that. And, there is an FAQ that we can provide. I'll tack it on to the last slide. There is an FAQ that CMS issued about PCOS and enrolling these providers. So hopefully it has something in there about that. Okay, here's from Veronica. Providers are conducting telehealth from a hospital, and virtual care is billed by facilities on a UBO floor. I've asked and not been answered about the G0463. I don't know. I hate to say, throw it at the wall and see if it sticks in January. My feeling is, and especially in that last telehealth MedLearn Matters about the 2024 MPFS, it just said facility providers are going to be paid at the non-facility rate. So, okay. Let's see. How to bill and patient provider are both at home. That's another conundrum, Jennifer. Jennifer. It doesn't make sense that you would get potentially paid more money if you build place of service 10 than if the provider, provider, non-facility, it's all the same. We're all getting the non-facility rate. It's just that the inequity. Oh, thank you, Kasheka. LPCs are now Medicare providers starting January 1st. Great attendees. Kudos. Sarah, this is a question for Melanie. Oh, but back to that last question. I'm hoping there's clarity that's going to come out from Noridian for both of our states' sakes and both of our regional, all of Noridian's regions' sakes, that they will know what they want us to put on the billing forms. Yes, the slides will be posted on the website. Melanie, hi Sarah, is the form going to be updated?
Yep, I just updated it.
Just did it. So quick.
I just did it. Yes, no.
So quick. She's amazing. And I think that's it. We're up at 11:59. If anyone has like a one, okay. Can an SLP apprentice treat Medicare patients? I think that is still a direct supervision. Yeah, I mean, if they can treat them in person, they can treat them via telehealth. I'm not sure if that's the case, but there does have to be direct supervision. That means that the SLP has to be in the same room with the SLPA. I know for RTM, they've made like PTAs and OTAs. They've made that general supervision for the remote therapeutic monitoring, and you'd have to go and check on that if that's the service you're providing. But I believe for every other type of service, that would be direct supervision, which means virtually in the same room. I mean, in the same room physically as opposed to virtually. All right. Thank you for your kind attention. Uh, thank you for allowing me to pontificate again. There's an Arizona telemedicine program. And I wish everyone a very happy holiday season and stay well.
Thank you very much, Carol. It's always fun having you on and listening to what, you make this very difficult, confusing stuff actually, understandable. I appreciate that because I'm not a billing person, but even I can understand what you're talking about. So, but anyways, if anyone else has any questions, you can reach out to myself or to Carol. The evaluation is the link should be in the background, your URL, and I also put it into the chat. I will have it in the email that I will send out after we have concluded as well, the information on the CME requests. So again, thank you for joining us. Happy holidays, and check our website for upcoming webinars. And we hope to have Carol back again in the future. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.